off. I have a couple hours before the sun comes up. Just to let you guys know, the police are still just driving by. I'm here to talk about police, and they're right there. I just have this sneaking suspicion that if the simulation will do this to me, I'm hoping that it goes better than I expect. But I just wanted to reiterate for anyone that might hear it, and maybe I'll send this to see if there's a light that I can shine on myself. It's too cold by the heater. It's too cold to leave my heater. So I'm just gonna say it again to tell my story at least. When I was 9, my father picked my friend and I up for our first sleepover, and my parents had split up at a young age. My mom went into Section 8, and she vilified him. But I'm my dad's biggest fan. I love my dad. And that was the first time I really felt like I was going to have a relationship with my father. And my friend was there. We were all very excited. We were going to build Legos in a ski chalet on a mountain. It was raining. So on this really long, winding hill to get up to the mountain on a back road called Chimney Hill and Ray Hill Road. There's usually nobody there at night. Everybody's already home. When it rains, the frogs and the salamanders come out, and they run across the street, and they just leave the ponds and they explore. So we were stopping the car in the road. We were slowing down, opening the door and checking out the salamanders and everything. My dad was showing me how it is. It was great. And there was no cars at all. And my dad drives we weren't driving like a beater piece of shit. It was a nice man and 2 kids going to a sleepover. We get to Coldbrook Road, which is like a more main road. It's still a back road, but it's more of a main road to get between the ski resorts. And we lived right next to Haystack Mountain, which is now the Hermitage Club, but at the time it was an abandoned ski resort that my dad and I would sled down, and there was nobody else there. We had the whole thing to ourselves, and we would climb up the hill and sled down it. And we lived opposite it, so there's a small dirt road that's just a straight line on the opposite side of the entrance. And that's where we stayed. My dad had his blinker on. My car makes a loud noise. My dad's car made a loud noise when the blinker would go on. It'd go like the click. It was a sedan. The cop speeds by us. Now that I'm older, this is what it was. I can recognize how fast the cop was going. It was way faster than any car I've seen on that road. He didn't have his sirens on. He passes by my dad. Maybe there's an off chance that the cop went right when the blinker was off and the cop didn't have a chance to see. But my dad turned. The blinker was in the direction the cop was coming from. We were turning left. He was coming from our left. Headed down towards town, away from our house. And he sped around. When we were driving back up, pulled us over immediately. The cop walked out. He didn't say anything at all. It wasn't like, do you know how fast you were going? My dad and him started talking. He said that he didn't use the blinker. My dad's like, I did use the blinker. There's a pause where we're both just sitting there. The cop reaches into the car they have to fight because the cop is trying to get the keys out of the car. My dad, after the cop reached his hand in, my dad rolls the window up. The cop is stuck. My dad drives in reverse, hoping the cop will... I don't think the cop is stuck too bad. I think the cop is... It wasn't all the way up, but it was enough. If the cop had moved his arm out, he would have had time, but the cop insisted on staying. The cop put his hand into the car and was holding on to it, and he wouldn't leave the car. And my dad just sped in reverse. As soon as my dad hit park, there were, I think, 2 other cruisers. There was at least 5 or 6 cops. And they ripped my dad out of the car. And I hid under the seat. But I heard them punching him and his screaming. He was screaming at me to run. And then I don't think they ripped my friend out of the car. I think they just went right for me. They opened the door and they didn't tell me to come with them. They just yanked me out by my arm. And they sort of dragged me. And then they threw me in front of my father. So they were holding him by both of his arms. And then they were holding me by both of my arms. And they were, I know, aggressive drunks when I see them, or just coked up white pieces of shit. So they were, when you get to that point, you do things to hurt people more, because the more you hurt somebody else, it's like fuel for you. You're now like kind of transmuting in your mind. Their pain turns into your power. So they were pulling me on both sides, more and more and more, like they do with the torture stretchers. And they were doing the same thing to my dad. And then they hit him. They made him call himself a bunch of names. They made him apologize to me for being a bad father. And then they yanked. I went home. They brought me back to my house, my dad's house with my friend, and left me with. They lived in the apartment next door, so they left me with his parents. The next time I really felt a police officer wasn't doing his job, in Brattleboro, there's tons of African immigrants. There's tons of multi-generational black families. When BLM happened and George Floyd happened, a lot of my friends that were women of color, who were like 18, 19, 20, and they don't commit crimes. They were nerdy and peaceful and spiritual. I lived in Brattleboro, Vermont. There was a fat white cop that was bald, that every time they left their home and would go around town, he would be there and he would just get out of his car, park it, and just follow them around with his hand on his gun. Pretty much until George Floyd blew over. He was just following them around with his hand on his gun. And these are like 18-year-old girls that were protesters for women's rights. They were like good in class. They had just graduated. Maybe they were 19. I think the oldest was 24, and the youngest was 18. And they were girls, and you would just follow them around all day. Then I got the Dodge Magnum. After Dogecoin, no police. I mean, the only police that showed up once, my girlfriend at the time got in a fight with her grandma, and her grandma sent the police and told them that I was an abusive, like domestic abuser. So 4 cops showed up while we were having sex, and they tried to get her away from me. And she was just like, "No, I don't know why you're doing this." And then I looked out the window, and her grandma had like a weird smile, and she was just staring at me like she's gonna get me. And I just said, like, her grandmother's crazy. She comes here to get away from her grandmother. I had shorts on, you know. So they leave. She comes back and it's fine. But then when I got the Dodge Magnum, then they started showing up every day for weeks. Sometimes 3 times a week, sometimes every day for like 3 days in a row. The Brattleboro Police Department, they said they had noise complaints, but I'm showing them every day I don't have any noise. I don't make any noise. Then after 6 months, they show up with at least 3 or 4 cruisers, and they were all packed, like three officers per cruiser. So I'd say the whole department showed up just to stand outside my door, banging on my door. So I just kept it locked and freestyled. And then they left. Then we had the simple assault, where I was getting evicted for all the police calls, and because the stress from it, I still had a regressing brain injury. So I was struggling. I do great when I'm outside alone, deep in the forest. I don't do great when I'm cooped up in a box, surrounded by stressors. But I like fighting, so I enjoyed it at least. But it was hard for me to manage keeping up with emails. So I missed my paperwork at a certain due date. So she was just like, I don't want to waste time just to evict him. Because I'd also been emailing her about the sexual abuse that was happening to me and my friends in the building. It happened to me, and then they tried to do it to my girlfriend at the time, and I call him my foster brother. So I'd already emailed her and she didn't care. So then I got evicted. But coincidentally, the day after I got evicted, and this wasn't me, lightning or something or an explosion happened on the roof of her main building. So her entire roof burned down. So I got some Taco Bell and I pulled my car up that she was so mad about. They were all mad about my car. And I just pulled up and ate a burrito from Taco Bell there and watched. But before that, that was my first day of homelessness. The manager that evicted me, her building the top of her building burned down completely. She was so mad about I had to pay $28 a month with my public housing voucher. My rent was like $28 a month, and she was so mad about that $28, she evicted me. And then her roof, probably like $100,000 maybe. It's a big building. But before that, when I was still in the building, my neighbor who was calling the police and writing me love letters and just not being cooperative and being crazy about it, that had also done some things trying to coerce young kids in the building. When I was leaving and he knew, because his mission was to get me evicted, when he knew he won, he left his apartment like, I'm gonna walk, he's gonna have to move out of the way, and I'm gonna walk, and he can't do anything to me. So I just moved, I pulled my shoulder out, and I stopped in place. So he'd have to move out of the way, because I knew what he was doing. He leaves his house once a month. That guy would leave his house once a month to go get food. So for him to coincidentally be walking out the same time I'm out there for the first time, he was doing it to show off, because I was like a target in his mind. But the cops showed up and he saw my car and he saw what I was wearing. I was wearing Tim boots. They'd seen me around town with the girls of color that they used to follow around. So he gave me a simple assault charge without seeing any evidence. He said, "Did you bump into him?" And I said, yeah. And I said, I'm also sick of what he's doing. So he took that as motive. But really, I didn't even bump into him. I stopped in place and he bumped into me. All my stuff was in the hallway. But he gave me the simple assault charge. Then he went to review the evidence on the camera footage with the maintenance. And I said, while you're there, you should check out that my ex's boyfriend, Gary, has been getting drunk, screaming at her on the phone, and sitting in my parking lot, just staring at me. And he told me that he goes to all of her other ex's houses and just sits there drinking and screaming. He told me that at 3 a.m. outside my house one night. And that guy didn't care. And then my car accrued hundreds of dollars worth of damage because he came back and he broke my side mirror and he cut my car with a knife. I don't have proof of that, but I don't see anyone else with motive. But I guess when you drive that car, it could have been anyone. It could have even been the officer. So, because they probably assumed I was dealing drugs, but I just made money on the internet because I'm smart. Even though I have a brain injury, I'm still smarter than a lot of people I meet, or at least I just have a drive to go further than most people will. So after that, I had the next thing in the building. My father shows up and he'll ignore me for 2 years, but then as soon as I stop messaging him, it's like his ego starts to get shattered. So he's like a narcissist, needs to feed. So he'll come back and he'll lie and do whatever because he's an addict. Now, because of the trauma from police. And so he showed up. I wouldn't answer his messages because he was just drunk and talking shit. So my family thinks that they can weaponize police, and they do weaponize police. It's just something with white people. You guys have no accountability and you don't care. Your whole system is corrupt. And I don't know how I can believe in a God that does this. So they called the police and said whatever they could. The cop shows up to get into my apartment. He asked the maintenance worker to open the door. The maintenance worker had assaulted me before. After I got the car, just one day, I'm trying to get in the building and he slams the door on my foot. I put my foot into block because I know he just runs at the door to slam it. COVID made everyone crazy. So I was like, that's assault. I can have a testimony that guy assaulted me. I know there were people watching that would testify for me if I ever did. And his name is Paul, that assaulted me. So he lets the guy into my apartment. I don't know if that's a violation of my Fourth Amendment right, but the cop comes in. I had court coming up for the simple assault in a couple days. The cop comes in and he coughs and sneezes all over my room. He's sick. I get really sick. I text the judge and I email the judge, I email the court system, I call the court system for an hour and a half until my hearing goes on, and then I'm calling in during the hearing and telling them I'm there. And they didn't answer me. They hung up on me several times. They gave me a huge attitude about it. I was really sick. I had a thermometer in my hand telling them I have a 103 fever. I'm not lying. Something got me really sick. And it was when the dad sent the cops at me because I wouldn't answer his drunk messages. And then the cop opened my door illegally with the maintenance and then stomped into my house, into my room, and then coughed and sneezed everywhere. I swear to God. I swear to God. So I got really sick and I couldn't go to court, and I called them for an hour and a half before my hearing over and over and over. I sent the judge an email saying, I know you're going to think I'm a snotty kid because everybody's freaking out that I have this nice car. I don't deal drugs. I make money on the internet. work with me. I have a lot of other trauma I'm dealing with. I'm not a snotty kid that's saying fuck the law. I'm literally like 4 blocks down the road, sick, really sick. And they just didn't, nobody answered me, nobody said anything, not even my public defender. I'd never been in the criminal court before. So I didn't know that if you miss court, they issue a warrant and the police can do whatever they want to you, basically. Because there's no way to hold them accountable. And even if you get the body cam footage, they don't care, and the judge is in on it. And that judge later let off a lot of sex offenders and a lot of police that were guilty of multiple counts over 6 years of raping girls. And when they pleaded guilty, after he quit the force, he pleaded guilty. Because when the girl was 10 to 16, when she turned 20, when he was raping her, at 27 she came out and went against him, and he admitted to everything, and the judge gave him 30 days. But when I went in, basically I was homeless, so I had to stay with my mom for a couple days. My mom lies to police. She weaponizes them. She admitted to exaggerating things and calling the police when I wouldn't go to school to try to make me look like I had severe mental health issues, because she was worried about getting a criminal charge for me not going. I guess if you're truant, parents get charged. So she said in the last conversation we had, she admitted to exaggerating about my mental health issues and trying to force me to have all these diagnoses and force them to take my blood work, and tried to get me on medication that would disrupt my hormones for the rest of my life, when I just had a bad diet, because I only ate Elio's pizza. But even then, I wasn't eating all the trash other people were, so doctors said I was actually in pretty good health. So my mom is that type of person that, to save herself from truancy in her mental illness, she lived in Section 8 and never left the house, and perpetuated the story that I was a lot more than I was as a child. Because she was worried about criminal charges for me not wanting to go to school because the kids were bullying me. And so I went back to her place after DCF and after everything. When I was homeless, I stayed a couple nights at her house with my cat. I was making a song. I woke up and told her I'm going to get my car battery charger. I'm going to charge my car battery and I'm going to leave. I don't feel comfortable being here. I'd rather be outside in the car than here. So she called the police and said I was coming to hurt her. She locked the door and put on this show. The cops show up. I don't know what they're expecting me to have, but I have my car battery charger and battery in my hand. They don't say anything other than, do you have your ID? I say it's in my apartment. They grab me. They don't say anything. I lift my arms up like, what are you doing? Look at me. They pin me to the wall, to my mom's door. I have my arms up the same way that they were when the cops were pulling on it, like the cross position, with my arms outward. And they had me pinned. They couldn't put my arms down because they were shorter than me and just weaker than me. They couldn't put my arms down. And I'm just standing there. The only resisting I'm doing is saying, talk to me. I don't understand. Why are you doing this? I'm right here. Look at yourselves. Talk to me. And then they pepper sprayed me. And then they put me on the ground, and then they dragged me on the carpet. So I had rug burn on my face and on my arms and on my, like rips on my shirt and shit. They cuffed me. The pepper spray's in my eyes. My mom comes out of the apartment and screams, he needs help. Which is just like, she's not even on earth anymore. You can't have a conversation with my mom. It's just like she's recycling whatever she sees on her phone every day. So you never know what she's gonna say. So I just scream, you did this is your fault. My mom was smiling when she was on the phone with the police. When I looked through the window to see if she was okay, because she had just had 3 heart attacks and was in the hospital for a long time. And when I got there, she was screaming. When I got back, she had locked the door and was screaming, "Hurry!" So I thought she was going to die. I go to the window to check, and she slams the window on me. But she's smiling the whole time, holding a kitchen knife. She's smiling. I swear to God, she was walking around holding a kitchen knife and smiling. So when they cart me out, I mentioned that my mother will lie to perpetuate I'm a bad guy, to just so that people will sympathize with her and allow her to remain kind of like an archetypal victim. Like, as long as everyone knows my mom has problems and that people hurt her, she doesn't have to work to escape and better her life. And that everyone that comes into her life are now feeding her narcissism, and she uses that to control others because they feel bad for her. So another ploy she did was exaggerating everything to, she needs a bad guy, and my dad was no longer eligible, and she had nobody else in her life other than Grandpa who was giving her money. So I became the bad guy. So she would kind of play that more and more and more, the best she could to protect whatever she feels she's protecting from, to her HOA. So all the old ladies in the HOA saw me, after hearing everything that my mom slandered me with for a long time, just making up shit and exaggerating things that happened. They saw me come out, carted out, and I was trying to keep my head proud and my shoulders wide and walking and not screaming. I was like, I held it in. I didn't cry or scream or anything. I had them. The ambulance showed up. It was young kids that I don't think they'd ever washed eyes before. They didn't do a good job at all. I can remember sitting there and they barely wiped at all. A tiny bit, and they didn't do any of my face. They just kind of spritzed my eyes a little bit, and then they gave up and left. I told the sergeant I want an apology. The police didn't talk to me. They didn't say anything. They didn't let me know anything at all. They just jumped me, and the cop said, "Well, I wasn't there," the sergeant. They put me in the car. Everybody's watching now. The whole place, there's like 6 different buildings, and everybody's outside watching. I'm sitting there. The cop is now like trying to get high and mighty and justify what he did, and I'm telling him, "Look, my mom's schizophrenic. You should have it in your file that she's been lying to police for 20 years. You didn't talk to me at all. I don't like your little dick energy, and I want you to get the fuck away from me," because cops like to stand so close that their dick is in your face. I don't know why they do it, but every cop interaction I have, except for the ones that are they're either like so overly aggressive or they're so disassociated that they stop. Like, actually what I'm talking about is that there's old skinny cops that are nice, and there are male cops that are immigrants. And in my opinion, those are the only good ones I've ever met, and girls. Female cops, immigrants that became cops, and then healthy older cops that are in the town that they grew up in. Those are the only ones that I've seen that are not the other way, which is they want to shove their dick in your face, they want to hurt you, they'll go out of their way. They have a whole list of things that they know that they can use, that they won't get in trouble for doing, that makes your experience worse, so that they can victimize you, traumatize you, and then they'll hold that power over you forever, and that becomes another stepping stool for their ego that they use for social connection and validation. So you become like a puppet because they think that they can control you. It's all about control for them. So that sickness, whatever it is, in people, I see it everywhere. And I've been through a lot more than just that, but that was present in that interaction. I was talking to the cop. I said I had pepper spray in my eyes. At least I know that was a proper use of pepper spray, I think. I think they were still... No, it wasn't. It was way too long. There's still like overly emotional children that are scared for no reason. Maybe because they're worried they're going to die. but I had no reason to. I wasn't displaying any behavior that would be irrational. They weren't using their minds. So for whatever reason, the cop lunged at me. I was talking to him. I had pepper spray in my eyes. I could barely see. And the cop lunged his crotch in my face. Like he suddenly jolted forward so that his dick went right in my face while I'm sitting in the police car and I'm surrounded by everybody. Everybody was watching him do that. As he was trying to, he didn't say anything. Like I was asking him to explain why he did that, and he pleaded his Fifth Amendment. So they cart me away. I'm now in jail. They don't wash my eyes again. I'm telling them they didn't. I'm like, the ambulance didn't wash my eyes. Can I please take a shower and try to wash it out? And they didn't. They aggressively chucked me into the cell. They slammed the cell door. The water didn't work, so the toilet didn't flush, and the water fountain didn't work. So I was using toilet water that had the pepper spray in it and my sheet. So I wet the whole sheet because I couldn't see. Once you wet the sheet and you wipe the pepper spray, you're not gonna continue wiping. You're gonna move further down the sheet so you don't wipe with the spray. So, and I don't think that pepper spray I think that was excessive because they held it. When the cop holds the spray down, shouldn't they be trained on exactly the right amount of time to do it to subdue the person? They don't hold it down, which could cause permanent damage to your eyes. And I think my eyes are fucked up since. I'm not gonna lie, I've been pepper sprayed twice. My eyes don't recover from it. So I'm in jail with the pepper spray. After they did that, at one point I had screamed my mind was more together back then. So back then multitasking was like my superpower. I would be able to execute tons of different stuff. I learned different techniques on social skills and stuff from YouTube and different procedures for running game at parties from autistic millionaires. So I just had fun with it. I kind of learned the fundamentals and I didn't take it too seriously. It just gave me an avenue to express what would have been a dissociative autism mind. I was able to actually become a role model and a leader and have fun and be confident with myself and be individual and unique and not be worried about it. And also be in a way that influences others in a positive direction to be whoever they want. And I also I used to listen to music and I would count out while I'm listening to music very vividly and just in the moment I would count to 1,000 as my dad drove me up the mountain to home. So I remember when I was in there, I screamed until I just screamed until I could count to 150. So I screamed for about 150 seconds, so 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes. Then after that, the lieutenant goes on the loudspeaker and goes, "Can I help?" In I can't even recreate the tone he used. It's this snotty little kid. I never understood it, but I'm a first-generation Vermonter. It seems like it's really normal for people around here to be like that. This snotty, childish playground game of what can I get away with? So I say, "You didn't wash my eyes. Can you please? I'm in pain. Can you please wash my eyes?" And he said, "I'll get to you when I get to you." And then he never, for the next 48 hours, nobody was there. At some point after that, then they washed my eyes. They let me wash my eyes, but it wasn't enough. They gave me 30 seconds to wash out pepper spray that was in my eyes. Where if you look at any other case, or even the case that just happened on October 19th, it took the guy 20 minutes to get the pepper spray out of my eyes. So they gave me 30 seconds, knowing that that's not enough time. And the only thing I was guilty of was stopping in place when my neighbor targeted me and came out to try to prove himself. And I just stood in place in a cramped hallway, and he bumped into me, and I got the simple assault charge. The officer that did that also did a lot more in that interaction. And then the cop violated my Fourth Amendment right by coming into my house for no reason when they have my phone number. They could just call me, and they never do because they want to do this. They want to get into my apartment. They had tried for 4 months to get into my apartment. Every day with those fake calls. So then, after that, after 3 days, I think they got me McDonald's twice. They got me one McDonald's burger and no drink, and the water fountain was there. So for 3 days, I was there with the pepper spray. Eventually, I had to piss in the toilet, so I couldn't wash my eyes anymore. So then I go to court, and the sheriff makes me get on my knees. I've looked up, you don't need to get on your knees for travel cuffs. They actually don't want you to get on your knees for travel cuffs. But the sheriff makes me get on my knees, and he stands over me so his crotch is pressed against the side of my face. And he just stood there for, maybe the same amount of time as the 150. So about 2 minutes, he's just standing there. And I'm just not saying anything. I've been awake for 3 days. I have pepper spray in my eyes still. So 3 days of that. So I'm just waiting for him to, whatever he's doing. And I don't want to talk about the rest of that. But he brings me to court eventually, and I get in there and they sit me down, and I still can't see. The judge comes in. I'm trying to put on a smile, and just like show the judge I'm not like they're treating me. And the judge stares me down with like this dark eyes, dead angry expression, and he's just staring me down, and I can barely see him because I have pepper spray in my eyes. And then I think I sat there with Mimi for a while. Mimi's my lawyer. They're talking about stuff. I can't really process what's happening because I'm thinking about why all this other stuff has just happened to me. My senses weren't heightened because of the pain. I was awake for 3 days, so I was just kind of focused on the dull ache of my eyes. At some point, I try to speak, like saying, can I defend myself? Can I speak about what just happened to me? Can I talk? Like, in my mind, these people are supposed to be helping me. And I just went through a lot of horrible things that I need to talk to you guys about. And this is a small town, so everyone's here. You don't have to put on a show like this. And then as soon as I said, like, hey, like and trying to speak, the guard grabs his gun and he stomps at me really loudly. He didn't grunt, but he exhaled with his hand on his gun. And that guard was directly in front of me. He had this stupid smirk on his face. So then they do what I've learned later is a Freemasonic ritual. If you look up why courts exist and what they used to do, they believe it's a sex cult. They then humiliated me and stole my energy so that they could become me, because they feel like they're stealing the blessings that the divine has bestowed upon me. And they have tons of rules in place in all of the things that they have that soon an AI will be able to uncover and reveal to the public as it scourges every document that the government has to find all the little loopholes that they put in place to do this to us. They did that to me. And then they just cast me out. Like I had to leave. And I felt all the people that hurt me, I felt like I lost. So I'm not somebody that this happens to, and I take it lightly. I got mad. I was in the middle of winter. I was doing push-ups out in sub-zero, sleeping in the back of my car, door dashing in a car that was going to break down, pushing myself every day. I thought that the town would be more receptive to me, but the police they charged me with disorderly conduct for no reason. I wasn't being disorderly at all. I screamed when they threw me on the ground, dragged me, and pepper sprayed me, and put their body on my back. They charged me with disorderly for that. So they told the news, and the news put a story out about me. I made the news. Casey O'Brien was called in for being, I don't know the right word, belligerent, maybe? Out of control, I think they said. I was out of control. And they had to show up, and Casey fought the officers, but he was ultimately defeated and taken into custody, arrested and taken into custody. That's what they put. So everywhere I went, the town was just treating me like shit. Everyone that used to look up to me and really respect my opinion and say I was a bright kid with a bright future and a really good kid, and everywhere I worked, they would tell everybody else, like, we just got Casey's here and we really like him. He's doing a good job. Everywhere I went was just disappointed faces that turned away from me. And I'm just there trying to make peace with what I had just been through, and I'm fighting to make my life better. So that I left. Eventually I left town because I could, after a month, it just wasn't going anywhere. And then everywhere I went from there, Montpelier, Claremont, different small towns. Everywhere I'd go to DoorDash, the police would pull me over. They would take my ID. They would sit in the car for way too long. They would try to yank the leash out. They would try to play power games. They would judge my self-worth because I'm fighting every day. So I kind of have this means about me that I'm focused and I'm determined for a better tomorrow. So when the police pull me over and they're lazy, fat, and kind of low vibrational out of it, because I'm meditating all day, I'm feeling at peace, I'm making music all day. So the cop, I felt the cop was judging that, and they were always trying to tear that away from me. They were trying to whittle me down with intimidation tactics and overly aggressive behavior, and then power plays that just little stuff that they feel they've learned to do that might get them a feeling of one-upping somebody else and hurting them. So everywhere I went, because of the car I was driving, they came at me. And I was just trying to get to a gym, get to a better tomorrow. Then I made it through Burlington for a couple months. I made it to New York. I was going to go down to Austin, Texas. I was on Star Road. And I was like, okay, I know where, if I just keep going, I'll be a star. And then my maps took me to the border. And there was a big opening in the border. There was the border to Canada is just concrete slabs. And there was just enough room for my car to fit, so I drove through. And then I lived in Montreal for a month and a half. I hung out with some kids that had never really talked to Americans before. I was sleeping in a Walmart parking lot. Eventually I moved somewhere out the way to get Wi-Fi. A cop with the same name as my ex that I had left when I left showed up and warned me if I go, I'm probably gonna be arrested, because I said, if I don't commit a crime, you don't need my ID. You don't need my passport. I'm just here conducting business. I just drive a nice car. So she kind of warned me, like, don't get caught. And then the next place I went, someone called the police on me for just sitting in my car with a Vermont plate. But I drive a black hood car. That's what they said. I'm driving a black car. I'm driving a Dodge Magnum that's aftermarket everything. I was driving a black car. The car was black, but the way they said black, they said, you're driving a black car. So somebody called the police on you. Then they ripped me up. I'm like, I'm not going to identify myself. I don't need to identify myself. And then somehow I think they broke into my car. They ripped me out of the car window. dragged me, pinned me, then searched the car, found nothing because I don't do anything. It's all prejudice. Then I'm sure they fucked up somehow. The sergeant was a woman who showed up. I told her I'm just trying to escape my traumas and I don't know what to do. So they took my car because it was a nice car. So like, we'll just take his car. And they deported me, but they didn't charge me. Eventually they charged me later. And we're like, okay, we're not going to do any, we know you didn't have any drugs on you. We know you have issues, so we're not going to charge you. You're young. You made a mistake, which was nice. Then I lived in Plattsburgh, saved up money, got my PayPal money back because the tow company took $1,000 when they said they were going to charge me $500. So I got enough to get my car to impound and get back. My grandfather fixed the car for me. Then every day police followed me. I had the battery in the Dodge Magnum is in the back. So every day the battery would kind of go out and I'd have to go out and find a way to charge it or have people jump start it because the electricity between the front and the back of the car wasn't working. So the headlight would always go out too. It would keep blowing 30 fuses, the pink fuses that are 30. So I'd have to keep getting the fuses replaced and find a way to like jury rig it, but the headlight would keep going out and I'd have to keep flicking the headlight, so sometimes I wouldn't realize. So 3 state troopers followed me. Then they pulled me over right before I stopped, where I would park and make my music in the parking lot at night of Walmart. They did the same thing: intimidation tactics, harassment, unnecessary questions, taking my ID too long, probably not even running my name, just holding my ID. Like, look what we got from you. We control you. We control you. And then once they feel they've hurt me and I feel victimized and they got what they wanted, the same way the cop that did that to me wanted, then they leave. And I feel, if you've never been through it, it feels like everything that you thought was you. So if you're just sitting at home and you feel comfortable, it's like they tear away everything and you're barely a skeleton and you're just in constant pain. Like they've yanked out everything about you and you're now nothing. And you're just sitting there. You can't even think of your memories. It's like they tore you out of you. And it's cold and you just sit there. And then they're partying with what they felt they stole from you. They're like eating it. So I'd have to I had to learn how to let go from that, not accept it, accept my reality and push forward. So I had to hold myself in and hold myself together through that. Happened to me for months, pretty much once or twice a week. Then I learned that they only do it when I have a good song in my heart. So once there's something because I felt instinctively like they were trying to steal it from me and take it, whatever that was that made me feel lifeless and in pain afterwards, when they would yank the ID. And now I see that's why the cops do it to so many people. But eventually I learned how to keep it pushing, how to reverse that, what they did to me, how to reverse it. And then keep it pushing. And that's when they started getting violent. They started slamming on my car. They started stomping their feet and grabbing their gun. They would start following me around town. They would start lying to businesses to have me trespass. And then in New York, they would just search me illegally. They would throw me on the ground, pin me, and molest me basically. Like they would pat down everywhere, feeling me up aggressively. But it wasn't like when you see, I've looked up videos of pat downs. These guys were like rubbing on me. So the whole time that's happening, my mom is lying. She's baited. She has a restraining order that she's screaming to everyone that I'm such a bad guy. Then her bipolar sets in. She tries to reach out to her son. I just respond. Then she calls the police, and I have a new charge that I don't know about in Vermont, that I violated the order. So eventually I leave New York after months. I went through a lot. I made it through a lot. I achieved a lot. I'm very proud of what I did and the songs I made, but it was a lot of pedophiles. It was a lot of it was pretty much only pedophiles and snotty brats and abusive police. It was cops, creeps, cunts, crows, crackheads, chaos, and corruption. And I was saving people the whole time. Every day I woke up and I fought, and I saved everyone I could. And I helped people, and I tried to inspire them and teach them what I was learning and what was helping me, and things that I knew would help them. And I helped a lot of people get to a better tomorrow through that. And I noticed the better I got at that, the worse I got treated by those other things. It's just white people have all these games they play to just eat your happiness and peace. And they use police as a weapon that if you try anything, the police will be on their side. So I got to Vermont. I parked overnight. Immediately somebody showed up, ran my plates, and arrested me. I told them I have trauma with police. I don't want to talk to them. I coincidentally have an order of protection against, or my mom has an order of protection against me, but she obviously answered. And she told me to tell them about my traumas that were inflicted on me by police because of her exaggerations and flat out lies sometimes. Because she's this horrible person, this evil, abusive person. And then she can't recognize that. So there's a caring mother operating at the same time. And it's like you're talking to her and both of them are attacking you. So I went to jail again. I got out. At some point, I saw my mom again. And she didn't care then. It's just whatever. I showed up with my friend who was running. He was an indigenous man that was being harassed and abused by white people as he was traveling around the country with his dogs. So someone threatened to kill him. They said if he's still there by sunup, they said if we see you tomorrow, you're dead. You're not going to make it. And the guy pulled out his gun and cocked it in his face. The police didn't care at all. And the police made him feel worse. I took him to Brattleboro. His pancreas failed. His organs failed because he's a drinker, so his organs failed. I had to take him to the hospital. They refused to treat him because he has a bunch of dead Spanish conquistador tattoos, and he's got LA tattooed on his thigh, and he's Mexican, and he's indigenous. So he looks like when he was 10 years old, he was an East LA gangbanger, but for the past 10 years, he's been traveling around the country with his dogs. But because he looks like that, they refused service. His organs are failing, and they wouldn't do anything to him until the police showed up. I saw how sick and cruel white people are. I saw white men showing off that the girls were brainwashed by TikTok, and they sexually harassed them and abused them, and the girls thought that it was fine. They liked it because TikTok had told them. I knew the video that blew up that had that interaction happen that I thought was sick and weird, and then the guy did it in front of both of us to show that, like, look what I can do. This is white America. So his pancreas was failing. They eventually refused service for him. They gave him morphine, but they refused service. And I don't think they even needed to give him morphine, but they gave him morphine. They probably assumed he was a drug addict that was coming in for a high. And then I had to bring him his pancreas is failing. He's shitting in my car, dying. I had to get his dogs from the Humane Society, because I brought his dog to the Humane Society so he could go to the hospital. I picked the dogs back up. I picked him up, and I had to drive another 3.5 hours back north and get him into the hospital before he died in my car, because they wouldn't treat him because of his tattoos. And he was Mexican. So I help him. Eventually I bring him, he hangs out for another month. I let him go for a month. He comes back at some point. He tries to get me to go to New York. I stay for another month. I save one of my ex-girlfriends that had gotten into drugs. There was an abusive guy that was putting his cigarette butts out on her, and she was smoking crack outside my car and didn't know it was my car. She didn't know it was my car. She collapsed outside right in front of me, started smoking crack. She was 20 and the guy she was with was 40. And he goes in. I can tell he's a junkie. An addict, sorry. People call me junkie. I just walk up to her. She starts crying, screaming. She won't let go of me. She's hugging me. She says that he hits her, he hurts her, he rapes her. I try to get her in the car, and she freezes in place and can't move. And she says, "I can't move. I can't get away from him." I'm like, "I can't force you into the car. If I push you into the car, the cameras they're gonna say I kidnapped you." Because I'm scared of police. I'm scared of white people. I'm like, I can't put. She's saying she can't move. She's paralyzed in fear of what's gonna happen to her if she runs away from this guy. And I'm just like, I can't. I'm trying to tell her what they'll do to me in my Dodge Magnum if I save her by pushing her into the car, or just picking her up and helping her in, or just any physical touch at all. I know the police are gonna take it and blow it out of proportion because of how I look and what I drive, and they might kill me. They've done so much worse to me than what should be allowed. So eventually the guy comes out and he takes her and leaves, and I just am too afraid to do anything. I want to hit him. I know I could probably take him because I had just gotten in 7 or 8 fights in New York, and I won. And this guy wasn't anything. He wasn't shit. But I just know that it's Vermont, and the white people in Vermont won't help, and they'll take anyone's side but me, just like my mom. They're the same sicknesses in all of them. So she leaves, and then the next time I saw her was a couple months later. She pulled up next to my car in an SUV, and she was with a guy her age, and she jumped out of the car and hugged me and said she loved me. And the first thing she said right in my ear was, "Don't tell him that we had sex. He'll freak out." So I was like, I wasn't gonna. And I try to make sure that the guy, because there's another 40-year-old guy driving. This girl was a child, a victim of a failed system. And I was trying to judge who was in there. I was talking to the people in the car and making sure that they weren't abusing her. And what I got from her boyfriend was that he's also he was a guy that gave up. He's just wandering through life, and I get that. So I know he wasn't hurting her. They were escaping from it together. She was actually helping him. And then they had 2 full-grown adults that were drug addicts driving. I didn't like that, so I made it clear. I looked them both in the eyes, and I made it clear that they knew that I knew what they looked like, and I knew what they drove. Then they took off, and I never saw her again. I tried to message her a couple times, and she wasn't all there anymore. So, but police show up again, because at some point my mom asked my aunt to reach out to me, and then because I answered, that violated the order, so the police show up to it and they arrest me again. I go to jail for another weekend because the cops will only do it they go on Saturdays, because they don't like you and they want you to be in jail for 3 days. So they schedule when they're going to do it to you for the weekend so that the courts aren't there for 2 days. So you have to suffer. And they think they're teaching you a lesson because they have no idea what it's like to be on this side and be raped by the police. And I see all of them. I see every department thinks they're so sneaky. But I can see the same thing in every department. I know exactly what type of people you are. I hope New York explodes and they all run up here with their guns and you can't handle the wave and they just gun you down the first day. Hopefully you live with a broken eye and a messed up scar on your face and an ear because the bullet grazed your eye. I hope they give you a bum leg and you have to wander for the rest of your life. So in Burlington, I witnessed more than anyone should. I tried to help tons of kids. I tried to help as many as I could. There's too many kids that ran away from home that are victims of this. I had to fight people to the death. I didn't witness this. There was no good cop interaction in Burlington. I never met a single cop that was good at all. There's not a single cop in Burlington I feel is worthy of respect. They're drug addicts that play a game. And the game is how can I hurt other people and justify it with a narrative. So what can I make up about others to justify hurting them? And that's all I saw everywhere. I saw police sexually abusing women. I witnessed a rape at Oakledge Park. I ran for help. I came back and they were gone. I asked for help from police several times and they refused to help me because I was a junkie. But I don't do drugs. I'm just a member of the unhoused community. And now their property taxes are so high, they're going to have to see it. So, eventually it got too much, so I left Burlington. I saw the same behavior in Milton. I was sitting outside in a parking lot by the grocery store, eating a cake. I was so happy to have finally been able to get a cake. Because on Thanksgiving in 2022, because of the violation of my mom's restraining order, that she was reaching out to me, and then I would just answer her. On Thanksgiving, because I was dressed in Tim's and I had a snapback on, and I had a black and gold jacket. I felt great. I had a chain on. But I was suffering inside about what I went through, but I felt good going in like that. It was like I wore a suit of armor and went to war every day. And I was making people laugh. Everyone liked me that I spoke to, but there's just this undercurrent of insecure white people. And they came at me. One guy I was talking to, it was Thanksgiving. Some guy comes out of the meat department, does the white point, which I didn't understand at the time. Does the same. He did it's like a ritual, the same thing the police do, where they try to take your power away through social games. I feel personally it's like mycelial spiritual Bitcoin. But if you're not ready to accept that, then we have a difference of beliefs. But I would spend more time alone outside in the woods with no responsibilities. And if you feel proud that I don't have to get into that situation, then you're being controlled. And the only way I saw it, I know a lot of people that get raped and get into drugs and they can see it. I didn't have to go through all of that, but I also have other circumstances of my life that have allowed me to get to this perspective. So I guess I violated the order somehow, I'm doing Instacart, so I have 3 families' Thanksgiving meals I'm getting turkeys and all this stuff. One of the workers just gets in my face because he has to prove that he's better than the guy in the hood clothes, walking around on a mission, enjoying himself. So eventually I go back and tell him, you did that for energy, right? And he's like, yeah, I did. So that's the most pathetic thing. You're pathetic. You're a pathetic wimp. You're an incel. He's like, oh, and walks away. Now, I don't know if he's even real. People are saying simulation theory exists. And that makes more sense to me, that guy's just not real and he was possessed at a time. And that the days are just like cycling events, all happening at the same time, and we're just jumping into different... But that's not relevant to the police. But if you're religious, it's relevant, because all religions talk about the same thing. And it's just the conclusion you get to when you ponder for long enough. So then manager is like this skinny 19-year-old, or maybe he's like 27, but he's way too skinny. He was wearing like a Price Shopper uniform, but he put on his snapback to come out to press me. he put on like his 2012 era like excessive colors swag with like a team of a place that I don't even know, and he's not hood at all, and he comes out to try to be hood, but I had just been in there for months, so I win. Everybody's kind of laughing at him. He storms away. He calls the police. I'm the last customer for Thanksgiving. The police show up. I ID myself thinking that it'll be friendly and they won't harass me and I'll be able to continue doing my job, because this guy was in the wrong. I also witnessed that guy hover his neck over an underage employee's thing to check what she was doing behind the register. And he thought that was like, oh, look at what I can do because I have a job. I don't have to Instacart like you. So I witnessed him sexually harass someone, and then he called the police and tried to sick the police on me like white culture does. And I thought that giving my name would be, okay, he's reasonable. This guy's got a good head on his shoulders, and the other guy is obviously nuts. But the police don't care because of how I looked. I had the tattoos, and I had the chain and the hat, and I was dressed with the nice black and gold coat and the Tim boots. They were wearing boots and a black uniform. I was wearing boots and black clothes that I felt was like my armor that would help me get through places. I was like, if I'm going to wear the same outfit every day, I might as well wear a nice one. So they immediately ran my name, found a warrant. I got fired from Instacart. I lost my job because of that. They took my Thanksgiving meals and they delivered them for me. I hated that they're going to play off that, oh, he was a guy that got in trouble, he got arrested, but really there was targeted harassment from my family when I'm just trying to escape the abuse that I'm forced to suffer through. I don't commit any crimes. Then I started stealing from stores. Not like retail theft, like they're going to throw... I would go to the store first, and I said, I had this thing in my head that I'm going to go in first and walk around and buy something with food stamps, and I'm going to get a judge of who's there now that I know how to tell people and what they are. And if the store doesn't meet my criteria of being worthy of respect, then I'm going to take things, and I'm only going to take things that they're going to throw out at the end of the night. Because that's how I would justify with God what I was doing, because I didn't want to do any wrong. So I would wait until nobody looked, and I'd take the ravioli that they're going to throw out in the morning. And then I'd go back to my car, and that was the best time of my life. And I'm so good. That was the best time of my life, man. My relationships are like a prison cell that I don't want to do the work to create the brain chemicals necessary to feel a sense of peace in order to develop a personality and an identity and a discipline and belief systems, and start to restructure the relationships, because I get good at it, and then the police feel my power and they come to hurt me. So, and pretty much everybody in my day-to-day that's white, and that's all it ever is. I know if I activate my spine and I start to bring my presence back into my body, I start to eat well and do and work out and exercise, I'll be more present to the moment, and I'll actually be here on Earth. But I just don't want to. I don't want to feel it anymore. I'd rather be dramatic and tell the truth. Like, I don't lie, but it might not necessarily be the best version of myself. But I also feel like the world is designed to systematically steal the best version, the true you, from you. And that's what, the more we're uncovering it, the more people are realizing all the different loopholes and codes that the Freemasons did, because they felt the same thing that I feel and that we're feeling. And they made a system in order to harvest that from us, to be more powerful. There's still pepper spray. It's been almost 2 months. It's been a month and a half now, and I'm still getting pepper spray, because Audette did everything. He sprayed my whole face, so it comes down from my hair. I now have pepper spray in my eyes again. So I was taken to jail, and in jail they torture you. They psychologically torture you. They do tons of things. It's a system. So all the police are trained to humiliate you, make you feel powerless, hold it over you, and make you feel molested and dominated. And then they feel like they've stolen something from you forever, unless you want to go further and hurt them, and then they can hurt you worse. It's a game that they play for the ego. So more of that happened. I got out again. It was Thanksgiving, so I was there for 5 days, I think. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So I was there for 5 days. And the crime was just, my mom reached out to me and I messaged her. I wanted to talk to my mommy. And she baited and fished me, because that's a story that she can tell people to gain sympathy, so that Grandpa might send her money. So I got up and I kept going. I kept door dashing. I got a girlfriend for a month or two. No, that was before. So in August, I was dating a girl. I went back to that girl for a while. I tried to get jobs. Nobody would hire me. Most places trespassed me. My car started breaking down, so I broke down in the Essex lot. More police every day trying to bother me. More just cops they go out of their way to swerve their car around you, make it seem like they're hitting you, stomping around you for no reason, slamming on your car door and windows, trying to get you, screaming at you to get out of the town and get the fuck away from everybody. Then you just kind of get to the next lot and hope they don't do it. Then they come back worse. They just do it over and over again. And then everywhere I applied wouldn't hire me. Some nights I couldn't take it anymore, because I didn't have a heater like this, so it gets cold. I'm in Vermont, it gets cold. I'm up north, and it's right next to a big lake, so the wind chill is bad too, and the storms get bad. So I would be there, and I didn't have a sleeping bag at the time. I didn't have anything. I was surviving off $20 a day from DoorDash. and that had to feed me and get me gas to get me going tomorrow. And I was also working on buying parts, and I was fixing my computer as I go, and I'm making songs every day from when I wake up to when I go to bed. I was cycling the same songs over and over and over and saying, as soon as I get an outlet, I'm going to make this change, and I'm going to make this change, I'm going to make this change, and I'm going to make this change. So I had like a list of everything I needed changed, and I just DoorDash every day, where I make $2.50 per order. My car's a gas guzzler, so I would make about 35 cents per order maximum with gas fees. So I would do that for 12 hours a day because I couldn't stand the emotional connections. I had too much trauma and sexual abuse and betrayal, and the social matrix was happening, and Andrew Tate was the most famous person in the world, and everybody was aggressive, and the white people were insane. The white people had gone insane with the power games and the lack of cultural diversity to check them. Like you have in New York City, so they just go mad with power, and they sick anybody that threatens their fragile ego. And then I embody pain and suffering and realness because of everything I've been through. So I walk through places, and it's just a constant trying to rip and tear my struggle from me and put me down into their image. And I didn't want to do it. I donned my armor, and I would go in my beat down car. I would ride into battle, and I'd go through the store to get my Instacart, and I'd go through the DoorDash, and I'd get my DoorDash from the restaurants, and I would have positive relationships with the girls. Eventually I would get the momentum going, and I would start to make jokes while I'm playing the music over and over and over and over and over in the car, and every extra little bit of money would be going towards energy drinks so that I could keep going. And I would just go for 12 hours every day, and I made 100 songs that way. I was mainly working for a group of my old friends that when I was in custody, I did acid and they left me. So we all did acid together, and then they just stopped talking to me. So I was isolated in the mountains, and my friends all cut me off after they drugged me. I was trying to help them with their dreams, because I said, if I help everybody, there's a better chance that we're not going to die, and that the world that I have inside that I want to make better, it will be better if I make everybody else's dreams come true. And they're all suffering working a job. I feel like I have some type of creative ability that they don't have, because I'm making art that feels way better than their art makes me feel. But I believe in them so much, and I love them so much, because I grew up in isolation. So anybody that wants to spend time with me is the best people in the world. So and especially when I was 13, and then they ostracized me. So now it's my fault. Now there's something wrong with me, that they won't. The first family I ever met that let me into their home doesn't want to be around me anymore. So I worked out every day. I was doing push-ups. I had them all in my mind like paintings that I was making better and better every day. And every song that they put into the group chat, they would leave me on red, but I took every song and I made it so much better. Eventually just the trauma stacked up, and I sent them one of the songs, and they never answered me again because it was so much better than anything that they could make. I took what they put in the chat and I made it better than any music that was out on the mainstream. So they never responded to me after that. So I guess I got a win, but I was trying to, from my mind, I'm just trying to help them grow. I'm nurturing people, and in their mind, it's a competition, and they're trying to kill my spirit like everybody else every day. So I would put my armor on and just keep going to battle for a while. I started hooking up with a girl that wanted to be a cop, and she did the thing. Turns out she had a crush on me when I was in an institution when I was 15, and never spoke to me. Because back then I was in an institution, perma-tripping, with a 140 IQ, and they won't let me leave because their minds are trapped in the matrix. And I understand that, and I'm trying to break them free without having the terminology, because I didn't grow up with the Matrix movie. I didn't know what that was called. I called it social conditioning. I called it the social system, groupthink. So I was trying to find ways to break into their mind from my isolated, locked, solitary confinement cell in an institution. And every test they gave me to test my cognitive ability and mental health, I passed. I was only there for insurance money because they said there's just no foster home. So I broke out of that by calling people on my phone 15 minutes a day. And I tried to convince the judge to let me go back to my mother that they deemed so mentally unstable I shouldn't be around her. My mom is convinced she's a psychologist. If she looks back, she'll realize that the court system was mocking her every day we went there. They're saying, your mom is a retard. You're not going back to your mother. We're not good. We can't on good conscience let you go back to your mom. So, but just for the police interactions, so when the cops let off was when I was sleeping with a girl that was going to become a cop. And eventually her mental health issues cracked, and she started telling me that she's possessed by a demon and that it possessed her son, and she's harvesting sexual energy from the McDonald's that she manages, and that's why she drives a Challenger. And then I'm learning e-commerce from a 16-year-old giant Chinese kid, big muscular, big Chinese kid that's 16 that does pro wrestling. And he's made $100,000 in e-commerce at 16, and he just sits in the McDonald's that he used to work at. And then he purposefully pissed everybody off so that they would fire him and they didn't like him. And then he came back and was now sitting there all day. And if they ever had a problem with it, he would buy just another sandwich. So the people he didn't tell them he was rich while he was making money from e-commerce while he was working at McDonald's. So eventually they tried to do the stuff they did to me, to him, with like the white people ostracization and making up things to hurt him so that they can degrade him and make him be like ostracized in the community, stuff like that. So he let them do that to him, and then he came back as a successful, worth more than they probably ever will be. And he sat in the place that they did that to him, and he sat there farming them for energy. He told me that he worships the god Mammon, which I looked up as a demon god. He said, I'm 16, I worship this demon god Mammon, and I give him the energy from these people. I did the whole ritual. I do it every day. And then they provide me with the opportunities on what to buy on my e-commerce store. They show me in my mind, I'm a Pisces. He said that I buy this, and then it just comes true. These random ass products that the god tells me to buy, suddenly there's customers show up to buy it. So I have that guy, and he's born March 3rd. Then I have the girl that I'm fucking, who's a Cherokee, that's born March 3rd, 3-3. 10 years ago, this family that I talked about that ostracized me, the girl I had a crush on in that family was born March 3rd. Then I'm watching Ralph Smart, Infinite Waters, and he's born March 3rd. And he's telling me about the matrix and positivity and spiritual upliftment and raising your vibration. He got me through all the trauma. Every day I would put on Ralph Smart when I was driving through these towns that were abusing me. He was like, all I had at the time was my music and Ralph Smart. So then I meet all these people born March 3rd. I already know I'm a 33 life path at that time. Then another guy, literally, it's this big storm. They've all revealed to me that they worship demons and they siphon sexual energy from them to gain favor from these demons. And they just said that to me. And I'm just living in my car outside the Planet Fitness they trespassed me from because I wanted a job and they wanted me to get the fuck out. Even though I'm trying to better my life. Like, they called me junkie and everything. And I don't do drugs. And it's below freezing. Sometimes it hits 0 degrees. So I'm just in that McDonald's trying to learn e-commerce, but my brain isn't working because I'm processing everything and all this emotional stuff with people coming in and out of the place and stomping at me. And I'm always I'm a feral animal, basically, that's had to survive for years now out there. And so much has happened to me that when people come in, I have to put on a show, because if I reveal that anything that sets off a white person, and then the police will come and try to rape me. And it's happened so much that I'm able to be in my body, but my spirit is now processing everything hypervigilant. And I have to fight them off because I have all this trauma now of people taking my power away, that I have to fight off the trauma of feeling like these people that are attacking me socially by stomping near me or walking towards me or coughing or yelling loudly in my vicinity and I had to hold it in and just keep pushing. So I would play chess and I would be sitting in the McDonald's and just fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting. And if I won, because I started winning, I was winning at chess and I was winning against these people, they just go out and key my car. So my car had tons of knife marks and scratch marks on it because they knew where I lived. I lived right next door in the Planet Fitness parking lot. So I'd show up. I'm assuming it was them, but it could just be racist or prejudiced people, not race, prejudiced people that saw my car sitting there every day when they went to work or went to the gym. They just did more and more and more every day. It became like a habit for them. They probably got a high from it because they hurt somebody else. But eventually we had this huge storm. It was -5 degrees. It lasted for days. I was out in the car freezing. I was under the hoodie and I would suffocate myself to sleep. And I would go to the McDonald's during the day and I would scrounge up money from the laundromat. And then sometimes I think Heather would send me some money. And I had some money left saved up from DoorDash. And I would sit there every day. Eventually the girl that I was sleeping with started giving me free food. But she was nuts. She was crazy and it felt draining. And it's even no matter how bad the girl is, at that point in your life when you're like that and the girl is telling you that she's, and it's not, I can't just be like, she's crazy, because the guy who's rich, like his net worth is like $121,000 and he's 16, is also telling me, he's taking what she's saying and he's teaching me more about it, about how to use demonic gods by sacrificing other people's energy. So I'm trapped with them in a storm. And I'm just sitting there feeling them, being like, when are they going to try to take it from me? Are they taking it from me? And it's all empty. It's just the three of us. She starts cackling, stomping around, screaming. He starts laughing. And then somebody comes in, and it's just like a typical Vermonter with a beard. He's got the flannel on. Normal, like country folk Vermonter, not like the city people that are crazy like this. He comes in and he starts making jokes to the girl. The girl's laughing. He walks over to the Chinese guy, blocks him, stomps in his way. He comes up to me. He puts his head next to my face and is like, "Wow, are you perma-tripping?" And then he pulls out a Celtic cross. You can go back to all my videos, I talk about it. He pulls out a Celtic cross that says "Based" on the back with a red ruby. And he says, his name, Moore, of the Moore family. People call me the light of the land. And he gives me a card for a rave for sober people. And then I try to be his friend for a couple months, and then everyone I try to be friends with that comes into my life like that falls, flips, and becomes extremely like schizo-demonic. So I lost him, just like I lost all the kids that I trained, and I lost all the girlfriends. They just flip and become these disgusting gang stalkers. So it is what it is. Eventually, I moved my car to the Walmart. I'm there for a couple months. Eventually, it gets too cold. I go to a shelter program for youth, and that was hell. They should all be fired. They all have names of people that have hurt me in the past. Kind of like I'm dealing with all my karma that was floating around in my mind every day. There's now physical embodiments of those people, like I stepped into a simulation. And then a Viking named Christian shows up after I help all these kids that are named after all my old friends, that are exactly like my old friends, but their bodies are completely different. They're different people, but they have the same names and they act the exact same way. Sort of like I'm recycling an old experience. And then a Christian Viking shows up and he starts trying to belittle me and scream at me, do all this stuff. And then I'm like, say it again. Because we're in a cold basement. It's just me, the staff members, a bunch of kids the system failed that are on drugs. It's the middle of winter. I'm staying up every night playing, because they hadn't made the rule yet. They hadn't found a rule to abuse, to steal our energy yet in that program. So I was finding loopholes to get back at them who were doing this to us. They even would come out after they'd suck all of our life force energy and they'd say, I just got like 1,500 points on chess.com in 2 weeks since I got here. After all of us are aware that she took our blessings and bandwidth and farmed us. So to protect the kids, because that's what whether or not it's real at the time, To protect the kids, I would play Lord of the Rings every night until we made it out. Every night I would sit there and play Lord of the Rings, and I would just play it at the volume that was allowed and that the staff couldn't tell me to turn it off. And I just play it over and over and over again every night until the guys, he would scream it, and then I'd turn it up slowly at night until they would scream at me. Sometimes they would get out and go, and just like scream in my face, and then I'd turn it down one bit and they'd have to go away because they had a boss and they had a procedure that wasn't like the police where they have regulations to abuse you that's masked in lies and loopholes, and so that you don't realize what's happening. That's a newly formed program, a shelter program. The other shelter program, they were bringing in drag queens to sit on my friends' laps who were 19 and on drugs, that were men, and they kicked out people like me, like masculine guys that work out. We never got allowed in the youth shelter. They only had the young set boys and the young girls, and then I found out they were trying to cart them over to some other guy's house to sleep with them, and if they slept with them, the guy would get paid. So they had sex trafficking going on in there. And every program I went to ask in Burlington, I was no longer eligible for the program as soon as I expressed that I was aware of what was happening. I was deleted from the program and trespassed from the program. As soon as I said, do you know anything about this? I'm hearing this. Kids are saying this around town. Are you aware this is happening? And then I'm trespassed and forced to be outside in the middle of winter in a tent, and people came to kill me once a week. And I had to fight off many people with my bare hands. So I learned how to cut a wrist-size tree branch with a couple swings of a machete. You have to get it at the right angle, and then just the swing of it. And then you have to also, you're fighting off somebody's mind. Somebody's mind is coming to kill you. So you have to display like animals do. So I had to fight off a lot of real heroin addicts. Eventually there was one guy that knew martial arts, and his name was Cat, coincidentally in the year of the cat. And he did mushrooms and pounced on me, choking me out, and I had to fight him off. And then he tried to push me off a cliff, and he spit in my face. So isn't it cool that happened to me last year, and then this year I spit in a cop's face and he tried to push me off. He tried to rip my palate so I would fall off a cliff. But the guy spit in my face last year. I guess I got to do to Audette what that guy did to me, and now that I've been homeless longer, I can see what I didn't like about that cop was what I felt, because I hadn't been degraded. I was still degraded way more than any other people, but I hadn't kind of gotten this far. The further you get from it, the more it abuses you, the more you understand what's wrong with it, and you start to come to the reality. So I can kind of understand why I got spit in the face, because I thought I needed to be strong and I needed to be clever and I needed to be funny, and I still had a positive relationship with my community because I felt like we were all in this together. And now I understand the fallacy of it. It's all made up. I like this life better. But the cops were raping girls in the tent. Cops were showing up and raping girls. 7 of them would show up and pounce on a guy and just beat the fuck out of him. They did tons of horrible shit. I never saw any positivity. I just saw them getting angry at the kids, trying to disrupt the kids that were having fun, and trying to traumatize and take all their emotions out on the homeless. And then they didn't like me because I had a nice car. And I'm relatively attractive. Girls like me when I go into places, but they have no idea what's going on inside, what I've been through. And I guess none of them had that empathy either to be able to see that. So they would take out their insecurities on me. So I was a one-man army against the state of Vermont for years. And I saved kids, and I merged the gaps between homeless people and the rich kids and different social groups, and I was alone when everyone else had jobs outside, so I was also feeding animals, and they would call me the lake some people called me the lake monster. And then I would just wander out of the woods, and sometimes I had feathers I would just take the seagull feathers and I'd put them in my hair. And I didn't know anything about the indigenous whatever. I didn't go down that road yet. So this has been kind of, it sucks, but it's been a blessing to have lived this life. And I can see the simulation working in it. Like, I pass down and I ask for synchronicities all the time, and I get them. And every road I when I would DoorDash, and I would just drive down random roads through the middle of nowhere, and the roads would be the same. I'd talk about the same names that were there in the King Street shelter when I led the Celtic army, the gaggle of Gaelic goons and of giggly Gaelic goons, and because they were kids that ran away from home. So we were like badass homeless warriors, but we were also just kids that were abused by a system. And they're all managers now. They're doing really well for themselves. And I got them through at least that part. And I had a full album at that point, Sundance. So I performed it for them. I showed them how I get girls' numbers as a homeless guy. I had gangrene on my feet. It was so bad. Eventually, I had to stop moving and go to the hospital. But I had rashes on my feet and on my legs. And for most people, like, you shouldn't be able to walk. And I was just trudging forward every day because they stole my car, that nice car. A local tow company just took it out of a parking lot illegally and said they didn't have it for a month. And then they wanted $5,000 for 3,000. They wanted a lot of money for it. And every day I would get up sick because I was living out in the cold in a swamp, because that's where I felt safe. And I would walk out of the swamp cold and wander about a half a mile up a giant hill from the lakeside into town, past all the people, past all the violence and the drug addicts and the city folk and the rich Burlington guys, and I'm sure people in the Senate. And I would just trudge forward to the place to ask him to show me some kindness, and they would just throw words at me, point at me, degrade me in front of everybody else, scream at me. And it's something illegal that they did, but because nobody else knows that they did something wrong. They were playing like I was the one in the wrong. And then I'd have to find another way to get food because I didn't want to steal, because I knew God would punish me if I stole. So I'd eat out of the trash until I get more sick. And then I had to sit in the tent for a couple months. And then eventually I asked for help, and somebody from a community outreach program helped me. But it wasn't the community outreach that were sexually abusing the children. It was somebody that knew that they were being sexually abused and made their own community outreach program. And they were paying out of pocket. So they got me a tent and blankets and a bunch of food. And I was able to heal from the sickness and make it because they spent all their money on that. But they had mental health issues too. They're not. But at the same time, Real Ricky was out there drinking, one of the local rappers, and I whooped his ass. I was on my bike. He was freestyling. I rode my bike around them all, and I freestyled until they all shut up and left. And I could tell I got the respect from the tall black guys that were big, and they don't like Ricky's rapping, but they grew up with him because for whatever reason, or maybe they just respect him because of the position he's in, because all the kids like him. So he's like a local rapper in like a white town. Like, they don't really talk to him, but they're in his music videos. So when I was rapping and I was good, I just went through New York, and I was on my bike. I was doing tricks on the in the skate park. I was riding my bike up and down I wasn't doing like BMX tricks, but I was like going, while I'm freestyling, I'm riding around the skate park, going down into the bowls and then jumping up. But in my with the ferocity of the animal. Because I'm just trying. I'm like, fuck you. Because he raps about his struggle. He has no idea. So I got him. He had his head. He followed me around. Next time I went to a next time I went to, I had places I would make music, and he would be too scared to come up to ask, because in his mind he's like, I have 3,000 followers in this small town. I'm like one of the best rappers in Vermont. You got to pay me for a feature. And he's trying to get near me. Maybe he's trying to stifle my energy. Maybe he's trying to steal my emotional energy, but I would be freestyling by myself in the middle of a park. So everyone could hear me, but I'm not performing for them. I'm fighting through and making my music with my headphones and on my computer. And then I'd look over and he's just standing there. His girlfriend wants to go home, but he's standing there lower than me, below, because it's like a hill leading up to a pavilion where I recorded a Final Warning, that video. The one at nighttime, and I have the hat on. Not the King in the North gives the final warning to embrace abundance, but a final message or something before it's too. I don't remember what it was, but where I recorded that. And there was also a pedophile that tried to rape me at gunpoint that my family is still friends with and talks to him more than they talk to me, and because he wrote a book and he gave me like $800, took me to see my family. And then I just, it looks like a ritual to me now. That all seems like a ritual to me. I don't think my family's even real. I think they're possessed. It's just too much that they subconsciously steal my power, and then they start barking orders at me. And it doesn't matter the body. Like, it could be 6 different strangers, but I recognize that it's some type of simulated, etheric ritual that happens to me all the time. And it happened to me a lot more then. Now it's different. Now we have crows and different enemies. That's when I saw the rape in Oakledge. The police just went in the tent and started raping her. I didn't have anything that would come close to a gun. I ran for help. Nobody. It's about a half a mile to where the cars are from there. I ran to get help. I was banging on windows. Nobody would answer. Like, they just sped by me, flipping me off, screaming at me through the window. And I'm like, help, please, please. They're raping her. And they just drove away. I tried it 3 times and then just walked. I think I walked at first. I was out of breath. I smoked cigarettes, so I was running and walking. I got back, and they were all gone. I don't know how the police got out of Oakledge. There's only one exit out of Oakledge. They must have took the bike path. No, there is a way. There's a... Okay, so they must have went to Red Rocks. I don't know what day that was. But the Parks Department was trying to get me out, and I had this big dream that I'm going to put it out there where they let me put my tent to get away from the homeless people that were trying to kill me. I had a tent, and I was laying out there in the woods, and the birds would... Every morning the birds come to me, and they sit on my tent, and they chirp, and they help me back. They lift me. They're like hands that lift me up. And they sit with me until I'm good, and then they go get food. And sometimes they would... One time a robin brought me a worm. You know, put the worm down for me to eat. And then I'd feel a little... I'm like, something loves me. And then a white person would show up to hurt me. He shows up, and I can feel the darkness on him. I can feel him trying to suck the life away. And I have to sit there, and I'm fighting it off. And then people that talk about gang stalking say that there's catchphrases to keep you in a state of control. When I got to that point that I was holding my presence and I was holding my power over them, they'd start catchphrasing. There's like a routine, like it's an AI talking to me, or another being talking to me through this body. That just shows up when I achieve a new level of awareness and presence again. After it's been, I told you it's been at least 12 years of being on my own. I did this all on my own for 12 years since I was 13 years old. My first suicide attempt was at 7 years old. I don't know what you were doing at 7, but I was trying to kill myself. So eventually when the summer ended and it became fall and the kids were back in college, they would come perform at the party. They'd have parties at Oakledge, and they would go until the police showed up, and then they would all speed away from the police. I was making my music there at night. I was feeding seagulls and skunks. There were junkies and pedophiles that would show up trying to sell them drugs or hurt them or attack them. And then there were a lot of guys that would sit in the woods and watch and wait for the girls to wait for like a moment that they could get the girls in the woods. I caught somebody with night vision goggles once, and I threw a rock through his window. Good luck figuring that one out for the police that stalk me. We threw a rock through his window, and he drove off. But I started performing, and then one night, the kids that heard me perform, I went right into the group. There was like maybe 100 kids, and I went right into the center and leaned out a car, played my music in the aux, and I rapped Molotov for them. And I'm not going to scream because it's too early in the morning and there are people here, even though they're not. I think they must count Cyber Monday or the simulation's over, but it's Monday. Usually they're here at 3 in the morning, and they're not. There's nobody here. But I was freestyling, and a guy just gave me his car. They all have the same names, so it was just another. I tell you, Sean brings me to a new stage of my life once I've passed the last one. So a John or a Sean show up, and usually it's a Sean. And the Johns kind of are with me through it. The Seans take me forward. So the Sean shows up with a Jessica, and then a guy named Patrick, who he's famous now. Patrick got famous this month as the worst homeless man, because he has every single day he commits like 70 different crimes. He's just a small schizophrenic guy with red hair, very short. He's a really caring guy, but he'll steal wine. He just walks into places and takes it and leaves. So he's in and out of jail all the time. That guy gave me his car to go see my dad because his birthday was the next day. I performed on the Lionsgate portal. In the Lionsgate portal, a bunch of rappers showed up and attacked me, and they all got famous that year. The ones that hurt me and abused me and attacked me and siphoned my life force went on to be publicly famous while I was suffering. And then the next day, I performed in retaliation against how angry I was at what they did to me. And nobody I told them like I had all these flashlights on me. Nobody recorded it. Everybody was cheering on and screaming, and it was great. And I never got my recognition. So, but I got a car that night, so I started driving, and then the police picked up again, just pulling me over, screaming at me every time I have a breakthrough. And that happened everywhere. I went to Milton, more abuse from everybody except the people that help the homeless, and everybody else is just bad. And I would save up money DoorDashing at DoorDash 12. I was DoorDashing 12 hours a day again. Sometimes I'd go back and try to see my family. And then I'd just go back and I'd just drive around making music again. And my speaker was a lot better than the Dodge Magnum in that car. And then I drove that car until it broke down. and then I'd break down in a place, somebody would fix it, I'd get a job, I'd work. They would fire me, or they'd force me to quit with the abuse, and then they would tell me at the end, oh, in Vermont, if you hire homeless people, you get a tax break for every homeless person you hire. So they're like, every place that hired me would take me in for enough time, and then they'd all switch. They'd flip on me one day, and then I wouldn't be able to survive. And I didn't want to go in there and keep doing that for people that were treating me that way. And then the next day they already had a new hire lined up. So I guess they make you quit. They don't outright fire you, they make you quit so that they can continue writing you off for tax purposes. It's a passive income for them. It's a side hustle for rich business owners at the Vermont ski resorts. So then I went until I broke down, and then we had this year with the crazy Vermont suburban attacks me. Then the police took his side. I got trespassed from half the town. Michael Casey O'Brien made everybody mad, and then Casey Francis O'Brien shows up, and Michael at the Claire Martin Center and Casey at Capstone helped Casey O'Brien heal the damages that Michael Casey O'Brien had inflicted on the town, or supported him, and maybe he was identifying a systemic issue, but for whatever reason he was also trespassed. There was already a Casey O'Brien that was trespassed from everywhere. Then another Casey O'Brien came in, and Casey and Michael helped me get through, and then I went in the woods because it didn't stop, and then I witnessed somebody claiming that the state police had raped her, and I believed her because of everything I've mentioned in this video. And it got worse. More people were coming at me. I got robbed twice. They were putting the gun against the window while I was asleep and taking pictures for their friends. The local kids were harassing me, talking shit, throwing shit at me. Every time I went to McDonald's, the McDonald's workers would... I heard one spit. I heard someone spit in the McDonald's. They made it loud too. They went... So maybe they were faking to make me like, maybe I shouldn't eat here. It just more to make me feel not welcome. Every time I went into the gas station, I got to see the eclipse there. Everybody was saying that, like, every app that I opened was saying that they're going to launch a missile as soon as the eclipse happens. Be ready. So I was like, the world's going to end. A soda from the barn, the gas station is called the Barn. Every time I walked through, it's a small gas station. The manager would stomp behind me, breathing down my neck. Have you ever been someplace like a gas station, and the guy gets out from what he's doing, and he presses himself almost against you, and he almost pushes you through the store until you leave, and everywhere you go, he's like, you gonna buy that? And he points really, really aggressively at the fucking... I'm looking at a Subway sandwich, just ignoring the guy. Trying not to cause trouble because I'm hungry, and I'm broke, and I'm cold. So for a couple months I did that. But one night I just took a fountain soda. I was like, yo, the eclipse is happening tomorrow. People are saying the world's going to end. I'm going to take this fountain soda and I'm going to leave, and you're going to have to deal with it. I'm sorry. And I left, and then they called the police, and the guy bitched me out about that he's going to throw me in jail. And I was like, no, you don't. No, you're not. Try it, pussy. I'll call your sergeant right now. And then I walked away, and he didn't come back. And then a week later, I came back to get a water from Subway, and the owner walked out, took a trash bag, and whipped it at me. I had my hatchet in my pocket because I was cutting firewood out in the woods. And I was going to go start a fire and try to heal from the traumas again. Every day is like hunting for a place I can hide so I can start to process and convert and get back and start to make my songs. And I couldn't do that with all the addicts that were shooting up next to me. and all the people that were harassing me. So I had the hatchet in my pocket because I was going to go down the dirt road next door, or try to find a place in the woods. After she whips the trash bag, she's like, "Would you like to pay for that?" Because I took a fountain soda, and I was like, "Would you like?" A week before, and this was a water, and I was like, "Would you like to pay for anything?" She's like, "Yeah." I said, "Can you name one thing you'd like to pay for?" And she's like, "No." And I was like, "Well, there you go. Don't be so prejudiced." And there was the 2 employees at the Subway were of color, so I was just showing off that homeless is the new black. The people are here. I gotta go. I'm gonna keep talking. What time is it? 4. Okay. Yeah, I documented on my so she did that. The police show up. I leave. Respectfully, I have the water. I leave. I compliment an old woman wearing a Bob Marley shirt, and I say, "Nice shirt. I like your shirt." And then she's like, "Oh, thank you." And then I leave to show the manager, like, "Look, I just had a friendly interaction, and you're gonna be stuck in hate forever." And I showed off how stupid and your mental illness and how unstable you are, and that was prejudice towards me. Because you can't just have a conversation; you had to attack me. That was it. The only violence she could get away with was whipping a trash bag at me because I took a fountain soda before the world was supposed to end, according to every social media app on all of our phones at the time. We were talking about it, and I was like, "I'm just going to take this." And they still, like, the old guy managers had to get one over on me one last time because they think they're attacking a junkie, and I'm just cold. And before that I did go to a church and try, but it's an old white woman that showed up and had something for me to sign. She said, "Sign your life away." As soon as I signed it, she started getting giddy and cackling. She ripped it away from me and she ran away because she thinks maybe she is stealing my power. Once I do that, there's like some spiritual thing that they can do. It was the same way as police, so I didn't feel comfortable being there. She would force me to be outside in the cold while there was Alcoholics Anonymous meetings going on, and they would let me in, and I'd just talk to them, and we had a good time. I made people cry because everyone had their problems, and I was solving people's problems by telling them, like, about gratitude and all this stuff. The lights are on. I know the guy here has already called me a junkie. They love the word junkie. And he said, "Get off the property." But he's not the owner. The owner and the managers, they're fine with me being here. I'm not sure he knows that, so he's very obese, like he's ridiculously obese. So I'm not sure how much time I have left before they show up, so. The barn told the police that I threatened to kill her with a hatchet. All I said was, "Would you like to pay for anything? Can you name one thing you'd like to pay for? Don't be so prejudiced." And she told them I threatened to kill her with a hatchet. The police showed up, tried to search me illegally. I refused. I pulled my phone out to record them, and I said I have a YouTube channel. Then they started screaming at me. Like, I walked away, and they started screaming like little kids. Angry little kids on drugs screaming at me. They sped the car by me, almost hitting me. They went up to my car like 60 miles an hour up in through a parking lot just to get there, and they slammed the paper on the fucking windshield, and at least I heard the bang. Now that I think about it, that could have been my car door when they stole my machete. So they showed up and they did that. I just walked away, and I think I recorded a video, but I don't know if I had charge, and I don't think I had access to Wi-Fi at the time. But they did that, so I got charged with something. Probably the trespass from the barn. And they tried to search me illegally. So after that, I got mad. I did have self-service because I called 4 different departments that day and told them they tried to search me illegally, and the woman is lying. And then the cop later said that he never even looked at the footage. They were going to charge me, and they said that they were going to charge me, and he didn't even look at the footage. Because they don't care. It's not a system based on justice, and the authority is made up. It's just to hurt people they don't like, and that's all it is. So I moved into the woods. More people trying to kill me every day, more people firing shots at my car, more people cutting my car to pieces, just knifing my car. Not cutting my... I'm getting tired, that's why I'm talking like this. Just more with the car. I learned the indigenous singing. I had a lot of spiritual experiences I talked about. I was doing bushcraft in the woods. It's going to be probably memories I'll look back on for the rest of my life fondly. It was some of the best times of my life because I finally found sanctuary. And the only reason I didn't leave that parking lot when I was offered to get a job in a city is because I felt God's voice come down and say the word sanctuary. And I saw that there was something in the woods I needed to go see. So I went to see that, and I found the sanctuary, by the way. And then I raised a family. I protected a family of robins from a crow, from a black eagle, a young eagle. Before it has the white feathers, they're black. And if you look up Black Eagle Beats, I was playing Black Eagle Beats and making an album to that in there while I'm defending the robins from the black eagle. And then eventually I felt healed enough and safe enough that I ventured back in and tried to get a job at the U.S. Auto Venture, and they said they were going to hire me, and then it's the same thing. You go in, they act pleasant the whole time you fill out the application. Once you fill out the application, you're no longer welcome, and they just say, I don't know what happened, or they just say no, and if you try anything, they'll trespass you. So they give you hope, and they let you fill out the application. I have 10 years of experience working since I was a homeless 14-year-old. I've been working since I was 13 years old, and I was working doubles when I was 13. I was working 16-hour shifts in a dish pit that was 200 degrees, and I was the main dishwasher. Everyone else was old and alcoholics and they were pretty out of it. And I was running the shit, and my mom says I have disabilities because I was perma-tripping on acid. I was running the show there. I was running the dish pit. 16-hour shifts for a couple weeks. Like everybody stepped back and let me do my thing. And then one day my dad broke, and that's why I went in. But they wouldn't hire me, even though I had a decade of experience. And I was a shift lead at Dunkin' in 3 different locations. At 17, I was the primary closer at Dunkin', full time. So it is what it is. They wouldn't hire me for rumors about what happened in the laundromat. The guy, I had a job next door at the music center. I was going to help put flooring in, and then they trespassed me. They said I could stay there overnight to get a job the next day, and then when the morning came, the police showed up. They lied to me. Then I started singing. I went up to Vermont State College because I wanted to get a degree in wildlife rehab. I wanted to turn that sanctuary into a wildlife rehabilitation center for birds and squirrels and everything. And I had a lot of big dreams for that place that I wanted to do. If I just kept making the content and kept talking to the phone, eventually a rich guy would see what I'm doing, and he would send me what I needed to get me out of the struggle. And then I could make in 1 year, I could make a change. If I wasn't so beat down like this, I would be an unstoppable force across the whole world. I really believe that I would be the most famous person in the world very quickly if I wasn't forced to be in this situation. So I'm grateful for it, because every year I find out more and more about what I like and what I don't like. But I'm always trying to make a difference. I'm a 33 life path. But I go to the Vermont State College to check it out. I'm singing the Native American songs because that helps me through the trauma. That's what it was really helping, actually. So I'm singing the songs. I feel like this weird hateful look in the back of my, like, hit my shoulder, and it feels like the police, the same way the police did to me. I feel the same thing. So I'm like, fuck it, it's just an angry security guard. So I take a fallen tree branch and I start to brush it off while I'm doing the indigenous dancing and singing. I take a tree branch and I brush it off. The governor of Vermont then texts security and says, why is this? He either said engine or he said, why is this guy squawking? And then a Navajo man delivers me the trespass order. And we talk about his dead son, because I was coincidentally sitting near his grave. I don't know if I told him that I lost a son, but my son was not as old as his was. So that happened. I had a guy lined up to take my car. He was going to buy it. The police, I call the police and I call the state police and say, hey, I have somebody lined up to take the car. Then I told him the exact day that he was going to be there to get the car. Then the day before they took it, we had a hurricane coming in. It was on top of a mountain. No rain would be there. I have to go. I have to go right now. Should I push it? They're pulling in. It's 4:50. I have 38. Basically, they forced me to be there because there was a hurricane happening. So they did trespass me from the state college. But the only place I could find that felt safe to me, I was going along these trails that I guess are owned by the college, and it's not public trails. And then there was a shack, and I was in the shack. And the shack is like an extension, even though it's barely used. The shack is an extension of, to me it looks like farmland, but I guess they rent out the farmland to farmers and they own the property. So the security guard was watching me. As soon as the hurricane was over, he showed up. And he did the white people point. He treated me like shit. I was not. And then I got picked up for something else. I think it's just missing court because of the judge that would stare me down and do these power games kept trying to get me imprisoned for misdemeanors. He kept pushing it and pushing it and pushing it and trying to get mental health workers to put me in an institution. And just anything he can. Just to attack me. He got snottier and snottier, and his eyes got darker every time. I felt weaker every time. All sorts of shit. He was just siphoning me. There's a fat white guy in a truck that's staring me down right now. And he's driving over here. Probably just to swerve the truck at me and then call the police. They're gonna talk shit to each other until they get mad enough to do something. And then I will be victimized. Here he is. In this town, it's always the guys in the neon shirts, the neon green and the neon orange shirts. Fat white guys in trucks. Those guys try to run me off the road when I'm on my bike. They'll swerve at me. If I'm going through a parking lot, I'm like in a straight line trying to get to where I'm going, and they'll stop the truck and they'll stare at me give me the finger, slam on the steering wheel, and speed off, revving the engine. They'll follow me through stores, just stomping and pretending to look at things, but just trying to get near me. And my dad's gonna die. And I don't know how to help. So I got picked up because everywhere I went they called the police. So in Randolph, just one day, one place I felt safe, I found another sanctuary with an outlet to charge my phone to escape into making my songs. And I would lay there in the sun and just try to heal from what I've been through and just get myself back together. Because when you're out here, you have to piece yourself together. You have to create yourself over and over again. And when you have an album, you have a certain type of yourself you need to express and live inside. So I had to fight. I had to keep fighting for that. So I would just lay there for hours like I used to, putting myself together again. Like the alien spaceships from Skyline when they nuked it. And just another people that could have a conversation with me sicking the police on me. So that's when I posted Getting Arrested Live. I had just gone through like a week of suffering and was finally healing on an 11 day, which happens every time. And today's an 11 day, it's a 2. So I got arrested again, and that time they targeted me again for the weekend. So I was in there for the weekend. When I got out, I didn't know when court was. My phone broke and I rode my bike north. And then more instances of people calling the police, sicking the police on me, police bring me places, and then other precincts were coming at me. I'm still that's while I was live streaming outside the Capitol building while I was waiting for the SIM cards to come in at Walmart. And then we got through that, and then eventually I got this bike and I made it here. And then I already posted that I had permission to be there. The cop Marco refused to leave. I gave him my first name out of courtesy. He demanded my last name. Had no RAS because I told him I was willing to meet him in the morning in 2 hours when the supervisor gets here. She can say yeah, because we just had a conversation literally the day before. He did a retaliatory charge because his feelings were hurt because I knew my rights. And then they did the same thing everywhere they could, just trying to intimidate and harass me and do whatever they could until they did excessive use of force. They lied about why they were here. I stole a propane tank to survive. I didn't have this heater yet. I didn't even have a tent back then. Remember, I was sleeping in a broken tent with holes in it. And I didn't have a coat. I didn't even have a coat. I had a thin leather jacket. I don't even think I didn't even have a hoodie back then. So I took a $7.99 propane tank. I intended to pay $15 for a double pack, and then I was going to order it to the store, and then just not take it, so they would actually get 2 extra propane tanks on me for allowing me to live. But they sicked the police on me. And they showed up to hurt me again. And I'm sure there's tons of violations. And then they came back for 2 months to try to hammer in the weakness they thought they made me feel. Instead of telling me I have a warrant, they sat here and lied for 20 minutes. They started screaming at me. They pretended to leave and then just stood there. They did everything they could except talk to me. They created an unsafe environment. After months of the retaliatory harassment, following me around town, and all the other things that this police station has done to prove to me that they're not good people. They're not people that follow the rules. They're not people that care. Out here in the woods, they pretended to leave, and then they stood there to create suspense, to try to intimidate me. Instead of just telling me I had a warrant, they got really sneaky about it and snarky about it. He was stomping, just anything he could do. He was screaming at me at one point, barking his words at me. That I called out in my live stream when I eventually got my phone ready and started recording. Then I told you I've been sprayed before, so to have him spray my entire face, which I couldn't breathe. I would inhale, and then it would get further into my lungs, and I was afraid that if I did it any further, it would get to a point where I really couldn't breathe and it would be in my lungs. So I was like that's why my voice was really high-pitched. I was taking like small breaths through my nose and mouth, trying not to get it to go any further. And they did a lot worse. He did an unnecessary wrist lock. I wasn't resisting. I was telling the camera and the body camera I wasn't resisting. Officer Lamb had no issue putting my arm in a cuff. Audette forced my arm into a painful wrist lock, and then he locked the wrist in place as tight as it could go that I had to later have them fix. He had my arm in this really weird position that hurt the entire time. I was more focused on breathing and surviving, that it didn't really hurt as much until we got to the ambulance. And then one officer was trying to get me to move forward into the ambulance. The other officer, the guy that put me in the wrist lock and did all this and harassed me for a month before and was following me around town, that 2 years ago when I was here to get a coat, remember during the polar vortex I came to get an O'Neill coat, he ripped my car door open and told me I was dealing drugs and told me to leave town. So that's a violation of my Fourth Amendment. He opened my car door while I was eating McDonald's in the lot, and I'd only been there for 5 minutes. So I know, and the next year he swore he would, I think I also have this in videos where I was sitting there in the parking lot at CCV, and he would just swear, he'd speed by me, him and Lamb, the other guy, would roll the window down and they'd speed by me and swerve the car at me through a parking lot. And they'd do it multiple times a day. And I'm just sitting there at a food shelf parking lot trying to heal the traumas and make my songs. So then one officer's putting me into the ambulance, the other officer that has my arm in this weird, uncomfortable chicken wing that really hurts. The wrist hurts, the shoulder hurts. One arm is fine, the other arm is like contorted. And he yanks it backwards. And that really hurt. That's when I recognized how bad it hurt, because I was more focused on breathing. I was telling them, like I was saying, help me over and over and over again. Trying to get the ambulance to help me breathe because I can't breathe. And then the guy yanks me backwards, so I just let out a fuck you, and then I spit everything that was in my throat. And I've thought about it a lot. I think I'm taller than he is. I was looking with my chin up when it happened. There's no way, I don't think I even hit him. I'm not sure I even hit his face. I don't think I hit his face. What he claimed is that I hit him in the neck and the spit leaked down into all of his things and he had to throw out $300 worth of equipment. I'm not even, then he said, the sheriff later they refused to fix my cuffs. I think he took his body cam off for a different reason, because as soon as I spit, he pile drove me into the ambulance with his whole body. He said it was onto the stretcher. It was not onto the stretcher. He slammed me down into the ambulance. Onto metal. When I already had the cuffs like they were. Then I stopped caring if it was in my throat at that point. I just inhaled all of it, and then they had to help me. Then the sheriff said he personally wiped off Sergeant Audette's face. And that was it. He said I had personally had to wipe it. It was all over his face. If it was all over his face, how could it have leaked onto his stuff? It wasn't like a gallon of spit. It was not... I wasn't coughing anything up because I was worried about the breath, and it probably wasn't that much. Because I was worried about any movement at all might cause the burning in my mouth to go down into my lungs. So that's one instance of him saying that I spit in his face. Then I found out, so the sheriff, I told him that you put my cuffs so tight it hurts and I can't move. My wrist is really hurting. I'm telling him he put me in torture cuffs. I'm showing the nurse what he did. I'm showing the nurse he put me in the torture cuffs. And he left me in a wrist lock. In a wrist lock there's what you can do and then what you can do extra to make it more painful for the person, to make him stop. He left it and locked it in that painful position. Whether he intended to or not, but by everything else he's done to me, plus the cuffs where he just slapped the cuffs as tight as he could. While he was telling me I was resisting, while I was telling the camera I was not resisting, one cop had no issue putting my cuffs on. The guy, while he was saying stop resisting, did all that to me. He was saying stop resisting for the camera so that he could put my arm that way, because he was playing a game that's pretty evident if you look at the body cam footage. It's pretty evident he was barking and doing all this stuff, and he's followed me around town for months, and he's been harassing me. And he told me to leave town every year for 3 years, every time I come here. And he tried to yank me as I was lifted onto the ambulance with the arm that he forced into that position. Then I spit, and he took advantage of that by pile driving me into the ambulance, which hurt a lot worse on my shoulder. Then he said that I spit in his face. The sheriff said I spit in his face. Later, he claimed that I spit all over his equipment, so he had to throw out his shirt and get a new one, which is their way of that's like a energy thing for them. They want a brand new shirt because of me. I got him to pay for my brand new shirt and brand new equipment that's probably outdated. So they tried to extort money from me. They lied. When I got to the hospital, the officer that was there, that I said was in torture cuffs and refused to fix them for the entire ride I was there, for whatever reason, he hid the body cam footage from the cuffs. He wouldn't look at the cuffs with the camera. He kept it away. Then another cop showed up, told me to my face he's not going to be adding his body camera to Discovery as like a fuck you. Then he had to fix my cuffs. Then he brought the other cop in so that the cop on camera could show that the cuffs were fine. And for all the nurses that might testify against that I was forced in a wrist lock, a painful wrist lock, and then locked as tight as the cuffs could go. But the nurse, at least, it's on my live stream, it's on camera, how tight it was. The guy tells me, the cop won't admit it, but the nurse admits that it's tight. No diddy. So then I find out later that he put, I was asking the sheriff if they could knock the charge off. Because he told me my world was I was so mad. I said, your world is over. And he said, no, your world is over. You just assaulted a cop. So I thought I was going to jail for a long time. I didn't know it was assault with bodily fluids. It's just a misdemeanor in Vermont. Unless the judge is corrupt, like the police are, then I'm going to jail for a while. Because he yanked my arm after forcing me in the wrist lock. After he'd been harassing me for months. He lied about why he was here. He created an unsafe space. He used intimidation tactics. At one point, he was just screaming at me. And this is just issuing me a citation for missing court, for trespassing, for singing indigenous songs. And the governor didn't like that. And I was only there because my car broke down. And I was kicked out of the town because I had to kill someone in self-defense. That I thought he was dead. People were telling me he was dead. I don't know. Now people are saying he's alive. So, but at the time, people, like even his cousin told me that he died from that. They said I pierced his lung. I didn't admit a lot of that on camera because I was worried that the police were watching, because they seemed to every milestone I hit on YouTube, the police showed up. Pretty much. There was always a pushback from people. So I guess I wanted to be famous and recognized, and I guess I got to see some of it. But another instance is that the sheriff told me he personally had to wipe off Audette's face, yet he put that I ruined his equipment with the spit, and it wasn't that much spit. And I'm taller than the guy is. I don't see any way where the guy's right next to me how I could be chin up, because that's what I learned is to keep your chin up when you talk to him. I don't know how chin up, looking forward, and I'm taller than the guy, it would go anywhere but his forehead. If I did spit at him, and I don't think I did, because he yanked me backwards, so I would have to have turned, he was behind me, I would have had to turn all the way around like that. You can't see, I would have to turn my head uncomfortably with my arm in that position to spit on him, and I couldn't see because I had the pepper spray in my eyes. I don't think I hit him. I think he heard me spit and he reacted impulsively and took it as an advantage. Took advantage of that to throw his entire body on me, and he slammed me into the metal side of an ambulance before they put the stretcher down. So in the report, he lies and says I slammed him onto the stretcher, and he spit on all of my equipment, and he ruined my shirt, and he ruined my vest and my camera and a bunch of other things. He wants me to pay for. Then he came back a month later, he came back with mental health workers because he says that I'm posting too much content about white people. So he has a mental health worker there to assess my mental health. And she's a bitch. She told me that she's going to have me hauled away forever. She told me, I'm going to haul you away. There's a kid that's a cop, and he's running around like a little animal because I won't answer them when they're like, Casey, come out. Then listen to how loud this is. Come out. Come out. Right in your ear. I sat there not breathing. I held my breath. They lift open the tent and lie about seeing me breathing. Then they go over to the other side, and this is on a cliff side. Let's see if I can show you real quick. You see that? How big that drop off is? He was pulling this way. He was over here kicking the trying to make me slip and roll down and fall. Hopefully that would protect me. But look at this. And there's needles down there. There's broken glass. And there's no crime that was committed. He wasn't issuing a charge. That was there because they were sent to find out if I had mental health issues, because I was saying I'm so tired of how white people hurt me. I wish God would let me kill him. But I'm not going to, because he doesn't. Sometimes I think about it because of how much abuse they've put me through, but I was showing a testimony about how God has actually come into my life to tell me not to. That I have a literal testimony about some type of higher force that is giving me what I'm asking for when I say, please just send me an eagle right to left, and I'll go down the route of like preparing for a zombie apocalypse and then waiting for martial law, and then I'll sit in a ghillie suit outside and wait for them to leave their house, and I'll get that final victory of blowing their brains out. And then I'm like, right to left, give me an eagle right to left. And I hadn't seen an eagle for months. And then an eagle flies the opposite way and slams into the water in front of me. So they show up and do that. Then he goes, so I'm sitting here. Everything that I've watched this video back, everything that I've been, hope maybe someone can animate it with AI or something. I'm sitting here in the tent. He's standing like this. So look how close it is. He's kicking it as hard as he can with his steel toe cop boots, shaking the tent. He felt me up. So while he was over here pretending to move the pallets, and he was moving the pallets, but when nobody could see him, he started feeling me inside. He touched me. And if I was a girl, he touched my chest. So if I was a girl, that was sexual harassment. But he's feeling around looking for a body. It hadn't snowed yet. It wasn't that cold. No reason to believe I'm not alive. But he goes, if you don't come out, I'm going to do what I did to you last time. Last time I used excessive use of force to give me nerve damage forever. And he tried to break my wrist and dislocate my shoulder. And then when I reacted to that, he pile drove me into an ambulance and then lied about damage to his equipment to try to get money out of me as well. And I can't really figure out what I did to him. People were saying that was a bad police interaction when I put bully cop. I wasn't mean. I didn't say he was fat. I didn't say anything about him then. I don't really see a reason why he did that. Why he did all these things to me, other than what I've described in the rest of the video. So he threatened to hurt me. He threatened to open my tent and rip me out, pepper spray me, drown me, like waterboard me. After pepper spraying my whole face so I couldn't breathe, and it was in my eyes, nose, mouth, and ear. Then put me in an unnecessary wrist lock, in pain, lock it as tight as he could go. That caused actual damage that I showed the nurse. I showed the nurse the damage that the cuffs caused. Then lie about it. He said if I don't answer this woman that they sent here to haul me away to an institution, because I said I'm tired of how white people are treating me, and that I don't like white people because of all the abuse they've put me through. They send these people here to do that, and he threatens that to me. He threatened me, and this is how close he is, probably holding his gun right over my face. So I go, I plead my Fifth Amendment. And he can't even hear what I said. He's standing right here, and then there's a kid standing over here that says he just said he pleaded his Fifth Amendment. So the cop's like, no, we're going to do it this way. I don't know if that's a violation of your rights, but he did that. I argue about how to extrapolate information from a situation to get a good measure of somebody's mental health with the mental health worker, and I win. She feels humbled and she got mad and angrier and said, fine, but ambulance is coming in 3 hours for you. I might see you in 3 hours. Meaning she's going to go back and find a loophole to justify hauling me away because I said I don't care for white people. And God is telling me not to hurt them like I wish I could sometimes. It's probably my mother called them to weaponize anything she can get. So then he opened this is a closed container. He had the citation. He threatens to get me for littering because I had a trash bag full of stuff. It's pretty easy. Look, you can even see that there was a trash bag. Look, there was a trash bag full of trash. I left for a couple days. When I picked up from my campsite and I tried to move it to Johnson, something got in and everything went everywhere. So he said, you're gonna get fined for littering. I said, I didn't do that. There's trash everywhere. This whole place is trashed. So he added on a retaliatory charge because he lost. And then at the very end of it, he opened this closed container. So I said, on the camera, I said, did you just violate my Fourth Amendment right? And he said, no, I don't want it to blow away, so I'm putting it in here. So he opened up my closed container and put the citation in without my permission. Another thing is that when I got back from jail, because I remember they do this on the weekends, so you have to go to jail for days. That's another way they can hurt you more and subject you to more torture to validate their ego. Because they see it as sexual gratification psychologically, Freudian psychology. They use it and they add it to themselves, and they try to go get girls with it at the local coffee shops. I've seen it for years. When I had the tent here and I returned, the only thing that was missing was my propane tank. My tent had been searched, so my blankets were thrown out. I was here. When he was going through my tent to find my water, because I asked him to grab my water to wash my eyes because I can't breathe, so I wanted to get the water in to get the pepper spray out of my throat and nose. So that they had to pour water into all of my orifices while I'm on my knees. Multiple times I told him because he put the cuffs in a way that was painful. Multiple times I'm telling him to let go because it hurts. I'm already cuffed. He doesn't need to be hurting me more. And he continues that aggressive trying to hurt me. Then he illegally searched my tent. I told him to grab the water. I told him exactly where the water was. The water was in plain view. He then goes to the opposite side of the tent and starts looking for things. He searched my tent. He took my phone without my permission, not knowing that I was recording. So the recording caught everything. Thank God. After he illegally searched my tent, going on the opposite side of my tent to take my phone, they joke around about accidentally pouring water in my eyes, or pouring grape soda in my eyes. So they're making jokes. I'm suffering, I can't breathe, and I'm in pain. They're making jokes. They took the water. They proceeded to do what people call torture. That's waterboarding. They tortured me. I asked them to pour water on my eyes, but I shouldn't have had to subject myself to that in the first place when they lied about being here. There's no trespassing signs on here. They admit that I wasn't trespassing. They admit that Morristown Water and Light hadn't sent them in the video. They say that they're here because Morristown Water and Light wants me specifically off the property. Then they later admit that they hadn't called them, and they'd have to call them to see if they want to trespass me. but my tent was searched. So after I left, because there's no way the blankets could have been here, because I was sitting here. Afterwards, when I got back, my propane tank was missing, implying that he wanted me to be out here knowing I didn't have any money. So they took my propane tank so I'd be out here without heat. It did not make it into evidence. I don't know where it went. That was the only thing missing. And I had $600 worth of stuff. I had a rifle in there, a BB, like a .177 rifle. I had nice clothes, like my nice jacket, the leather one, and I had everything a homeless person would need: socks, boots. I had a Mr. Buddy heater. My Mr. Buddy heater is there, but my propane tank is missing. And everything in there was strewn about, and my the blankets were here. It seemed like if it was a homeless guy that walked by trying to be polite by only taking my propane tank, I've been around them for years now, those types of people that would take only the propane tank and nothing else, they put the blankets back so that it takes you longer to realize your tent had been gone through. If it wasn't a cop that did it, my blankets wouldn't be out here. But in their mind, because they're trying to hurt you more, they're like, oh, I got him. Maybe it'll rain and it'll mold. Let's throw that out there and leave it. Or maybe it's a cry for help because they want a retirement pension and to quit the force early by getting kicked off. So they are attacking these guys so that they could get discharged with... There was a guy that was sleeping with an 18-year-old cop, a rookie, this like 50-year-old pedophile sleeping with the fresh 18 rookie. And the girl, Vermont Digger, really, I'm glad Vermont Digger really dug at them, because they made it obvious that situation is fucked up and that the girl had mental health issues he was taking advantage of. But that guy got $100,000. Imagine if you work somewhere and you get $100,000 for brainwashing a troubled child into sex. But it is what it is. So maybe I think that's kind of what they're doing. I don't see any reason why they would violate so many of my rights and hurt me this bad, as if it wasn't a cry for help or them trying to get off the force with a pension so that they can escape to an island or something. But what? Oh yeah, the thing he said, the reason I mentioned that is because while he was here, he told everyone that I spit in his face, but he claims I spit all over his equipment. But in that video, if we can get the body cam footage, and it's recorded, I think, he said he's standing right here after he threatens me with violence. He violates my Fourth Amendment right. I'm not even sure if it was legal to have them here. He tells everyone that I spit in his face. I don't think I spit in his face. I think that's a lie he made up, and he couldn't keep track of it. Or he thought that he got away with it. So multiple cops contradict themselves multiple times all throughout this case. And they're trying to get me to go to jail for it, and I'm worried because afterwards someone fired a shot at me. After I won, I made them feel bad. They still charged me, but I made them feel bad. Then they came back and harassed me and tried intimidation tactics on me. They followed me around town for months now. It's December, that happened in October, so over a month now. They've been following me and harassing me. And then was it a week ago? Someone pulled up and shot at me. And how would they be able to tell I'm over here from there And it was a guy that sounds a lot like the kid that was on the force, that young kid that showed up when I made the adults look stupid in front of him. He shows up, someone that sounds like him. They're talking shit about me. The long hair and the calling me names, junkie, whatever. And then they're fighting, they're murmuring. He fires a shot, and the shot was somewhere over here. Because either it broke a branch or I don't think it hit a tree because the tree's loud. But the shot was fired. Tomorrow, I guess I'll look for a mark. But there's no way to tell I'm here. And even if I was here, there's plenty of other homeless people around. So I don't know what to do next. I have no money. I have no resources. I have nobody on my team. I have no one in my corner. And this is what I'm up against. And I'm tired, and it's happening in 4 days. And it's only going to get colder. This was light work. Like this 20-degree week is nothing. It gets far below zero here. So I at least made it this far. I have a Blue Eddy power station coming, but for some reason it's going to Randolph and not here. It went with my last address, even though I updated it. So I'm going to have to get that, which I can do tomorrow. And then, my instincts are telling me it's better to run because they're going to try a Freemasonic ritual to steal my life force and make life worse for me again like they did the last couple years. I don't trust anyone up there, not even my lawyer. I'm sure they think that they're nice, but they don't understand they can't see what I see because they haven't been through what I've been through. So they're not experiencing the same thing, or they just have no morality to understand what they're doing and what it does to others. So I'm gonna have to go up there and prove them wrong. And it's probably a whole corrupt system that will not care. So I'm at least putting this here. If I suddenly stop posting for a month, it's because they wrongfully convicted me. I ask you guys, if you make it this far, which nobody will, please find a way to share it around Vermont. Send it to somebody. Like Vermont Digger or something. I'm gonna warm up.